95% of men think they know when their partner has an orgasm, but only 64% of women actually climax during sex. That means 31% of men are living in complete sexual delusion. And before you think, well, that's not me. Statistically speaking, if you're watching this video with two other guys, one of you is that guy. And here's the kicker. You'll never know which one because she's not telling you. Today I'm pulling back the curtain on one of the most uncomfortable truths in modern relationships. Why women don't tell men what they really want sexually. And trust me, after reviewing 43 scientific studies from Harvard, Northwestern, and the Kinsey Institute, what I discovered will fundamentally change how you think about every sexual encounter you've ever had. Here's what we know. 59% of women have faked an orgasm. 55% want to talk about sex, but don't. And women who earn more than their male partners, they fake orgasms at twice the rate of other women. Think about that. She's literally choosing to protect your ego over her own pleasure. If you want to be the rare man who actually knows what his partner wants, not what you think she wants, not what porn taught you she wants, but what she actually desires, then you need to hear this. It's because ignorance isn't bliss, it's just ignorance. Let me start with the most uncomfortable truth I've ever had to share on this channel. Most of you have never, and I mean never, heard your partner's real sexual desires. Not because she doesn't have them. She does. Research shows women's sexual fantasies are just as frequent and varied as men's. The difference? She's been psychologically conditioned to hide them from you. And before you get defensive, before you start thinking about all the times she seemed satisfied, understand that this isn't about you being a bad lover. This is about a psychological phenomenon so deeply embedded that most women don't even realize they're doing it. Dr. Eli Finkel from Northwestern University discovered something fascinating. Modern relationships have completely transformed. We've gone from survival partnerships, I need someone to help me not die, to what he calls self-actualization partnerships. We expect our partners to be our best friend, our passionate lover, our emotional support, our intellectual equal, our adventure companion, everything. Yet despite these sky-high expectations, 69% of relationship conflicts remain perpetual. They never get resolved. And when it comes to sexual communication, it creates 3 times more anxiety than any other difficult conversation couples face. 3 times. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. In the largest study ever conducted on sexual satisfaction, we're talking about 24,752 Americans, researchers found that men consistently overestimate their partner's sexual satisfaction by 15 to 20%. Let that sink in. You literally cannot trust your own perception of her pleasure. Emily Nagoski, one of the world's leading sex researchers, puts it this way. There's about a 10% overlap between blood flow to the genitals and how turned on a woman feels. 10%. For men, it's 50%. This means that everything, and I mean everything, you think you know about whether she's aroused, whether she's enjoying herself, whether she's satisfied, it's probably wrong. So the million-dollar question becomes, if we're so wrong about this, why don't women just tell us? Why maintain this exhausting charade? The answer is more complex than you think, and it starts with something that happened to her long before she ever met you. To understand why she won't tell you what she wants, we need to dive into the psychology of female sexual silence. And trust me, once you understand this, you'll never see your relationship the same way again. It starts with something called attachment theory. About 30% of women have what psychologists call an anxious attachment style. These women will literally consent to sexual acts they don't want just to prevent abandonment. They've learned, usually from childhood, that their needs are less important than keeping people close. Then you have women with avoidant attachment. They'll have sex but completely disconnect emotionally. It's like their body is there but their mind has left the building. The sex might look passionate from the outside, but inside, she's protecting herself from the vulnerability of true intimacy. But here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. Jessica Jordan from the University of Tampa conducted a groundbreaking study that revealed what she calls the masculine ego protection cycle. Picture this. Your partner perceives, correctly or not, that you have what researchers call precarious masculinity. That means she thinks your sense of being a man is fragile, easily threatened. So her brain goes through this chain reaction. First, she experiences anxiety about potentially bruising your ego. Then she anticipates your defensive reaction. Finally, she makes the calculation that protecting your ego is safer than expressing her needs. The result? Significantly worse sexual satisfaction for both of you. She's not getting what she wants, and you're not getting the genuine connection you think you're having. Let me give you a real-world example that'll hit home. Think about the last time she gave you feedback about literally anything. Maybe it was your driving. Maybe how you loaded the dishwasher. Maybe something about work. How did you react? Did you get defensive? Did you explain why she was wrong? Did you shut down? Her brain catalogued that reaction. And now she's thinking, if he can't handle feedback about parallel parking, how's he going to handle feedback about his sexual performance? But it goes even deeper than protecting your ego. There's something else happening that most men never consider: sexual shame. 23.9% of women report experiencing what researchers call scary sexual situations. This creates something that therapists see every day: a shame response that literally hijacks the sexual experience. Here's how one researcher described it. Sexual shame leads to suppressed sexual desire, anxiety about intimacy, or dissociation during sexual encounters. Dissociation. She's literally disconnecting from her body during sex to protect herself psychologically. Her body might be responding, but her mind has checked out as a protective mechanism. And you know what's really messed up about this? You might think you're having great sex, while she's basically having an out-of-body experience just to get through it. This psychological conditioning doesn't happen overnight. It's been building since she was a child, reinforced by literally thousands of cultural messages about what a good woman should and shouldn't want sexually. Now we're getting into territory that's going to challenge everything you were taught about women and sex. Because the truth is, society has been systematically silencing female desire for thousands of years, and those messages are still playing in her head every time you're intimate. Let me introduce you to something called the Madonna whore complex. Sigmund Freud identified this over a century ago, and clinical psychologist Uwe Hartmann confirms it's still highly prevalent in today's patients. Here's how it works. Society divides women into two categories: the Madonna, pure, virtuous, non-sexual. She's respected but not desired. Then there's the whore, sexual, promiscuous, degraded. She's desired but not respected. Can you see the trap? If she expresses her desires, she risks being seen as the whore. If she stays silent, she remains the Madonna. There's literally no way for her to be both respected and sexual. This isn't some abstract concept. Let me give you a concrete example. In traditional Latino culture, women who own their sexuality, indulge in sexual pleasure, enjoy multiple partners, or dare to speak about their sensual desires are immediately labeled with words like puta and sucia. They're shamed and outcasted by their own communities. But it's not just Latino culture. 2/3 of Americans identify as Christian, and purity culture runs deep. Research shows that very religious people have lower sexual satisfaction and significantly more sexual shame. Catholic women specifically demonstrate lower overall self-esteem regarding their sexual attractiveness. Think about the messages she received growing up. While boys were getting high fives for sexual conquest, girls were being taught that their value was tied to their sexual purity. Research on gender socialization shows that differential treatment typically results in greater privileges afforded to sons, while daughters learn to be sexually restrictive. She learned that good girls don't want sex too much. Good girls don't have kinky desires. Good girls don't initiate. Good girls don't teach men what to do. These messages are so deeply embedded that even the most sexually liberated woman still hears them in her head. But here's what's really fascinating. Men and women are literally trained to communicate in completely different languages when it comes to sex. Masculine communities teach goal-oriented, assertion-focused, independence-preserving communication. You say what you want directly. You go after it. End of story. Feminine communities. They teach relationship building, experience sharing, connection-focused communication. Everything is about preserving the relationship, maintaining harmony, communicating indirectly to avoid conflict. 73% of men prefer direct communication. Meanwhile, 68% of women utilize indirect approaches. You're literally speaking different languages, and neither of you realizes it. She might be communicating her desires constantly, just not in the direct way you're expecting. That sigh isn't just a sigh. That shift in position isn't random. That change in breathing pattern is saying something, but you're waiting for her to say, "I want you to do X, Y, and Z," and that's never going to happen. Not because she doesn't want to tell you, but because thousands of years of evolutionary and cultural programming have taught her that indirect communication is safer. And that brings us to the evolutionary piece of this puzzle, why her brain is literally wired differently than yours when it comes to sexual communication. All right, now we're diving into evolutionary psychology, and this is where things get really interesting. Because once you understand how evolution shaped female sexual psychology, her communication patterns suddenly make perfect sense. David Buss's sexual strategies theory reveals something crucial. Women evolved completely different psychological mechanisms for mating than men did. And these differences aren't cultural, they're biological, carved into our DNA over millions of years of evolution. Here's the fundamental reality. Sperm is cheap. Eggs are expensive. A man can theoretically father hundreds of children in a year. A woman? She can have one pregnancy, maybe two if she's really pushing it. This basic biological fact created vastly different evolutionary pressures. For women, the minimum parental investment is huge. 9 months of pregnancy where she's vulnerable. Childbirth that historically killed 1 in 3 women. Years of breastfeeding. She can't just have sex and walk away like our male ancestors could. The stakes were literally life and death. This created what scientists call evolved female choosiness. Her ancestors who were careful, who evaluated partners thoroughly, who communicated indirectly to gather information while maintaining safety, they survived. The ones who were direct and sexually aggressive, they often didn't. Now here's where modern neuroscience gets mind-blowing. Dr. Helen Fisher put 37 people who were madly in love into brain scanners. What she found challenges everything we thought we knew about male versus female sexuality. Women showed greater activation in the motor cortices and somatosensory areas during sexual stimulation. Their brains are literally processing sexual experience in more regions than men's brains. It's not simpler, it's more complex. But here's the kicker. Sexual arousal actually deactivates the prefrontal regions that control critical thinking. Fisher calls it "love makes us dumb," but for women this creates a massive vulnerability. If sexual arousal shuts down critical thinking, and sex has higher stakes for women, then evolution favored women who were cautious about when and how they became aroused. She also discovered 3 distinct brain systems: lust, driven by testosterone and estrogen; romantic love, driven by dopamine; and attachment, driven by oxytocin and vasopressin. For men, these systems can operate independently. You can lust without love, love without attachment. But for women, these systems are more interconnected. She needs to feel safe, attachment, to feel desire, lust. She needs emotional connection, love, to fully experience pleasure. This isn't her being complicated. This is millions of years of evolution protecting her from the massive risks that sex historically carried for women. Let's talk hormones for a second, because this is crucial. Estrogen is the primary hormone modulating female sexual desire. It affects the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and reward systems in her brain. Her desire literally fluctuates across her menstrual cycle, peaking during ovulation when estrogen is highest. But here's what's fascinating. Polyamorous women show higher testosterone levels and score higher on sexual desire measures than monogamous women. This suggests that hormones directly influence not just desire, but communication assertiveness. When her testosterone is higher, she's more likely to communicate directly. When it's lower, she defaults to indirect communication. Now you might be thinking, okay, but we have birth control now. We have gender equality. Why is this evolutionary programming still running? Because evolution doesn't work that fast. These patterns were carved into our DNA over millions of years. Birth control has existed for 60 years. That's not even a blip in evolutionary time. Her brain is still running software that was designed for a completely different world. But here's what most men don't understand. Her indirect communication isn't manipulation. It's a survival strategy. Let me explain. Indirect communication provides strategic benefits that kept her ancestors alive. First, it preserves relationships. By communicating indirectly, she prevents information from becoming common knowledge that could damage social bonds. In ancestral times, being kicked out of the tribe meant death. Second, it minimizes reputation damage. A woman who was seen as sexually aggressive faced social ostracism. Indirect communication allowed her to express interest while maintaining plausible deniability. Third, it maintains flexibility. She could keep multiple options open while gathering information about potential partners. This wasn't about playing games. It was about making a choice that could literally determine whether her offspring survived. And fourth, it allows for safety assessment. By communicating indirectly and watching how you respond, she can evaluate whether you're safe, whether you're committed, whether you're emotionally stable enough to be trusted with her vulnerability. Every time she communicates indirectly about sex, she's not being difficult. She's running a program that kept her ancestors alive for millions of years, and that program is still running whether she's conscious of it or not. Now let me hit you with some statistics that should make every man watching this video sit up and pay attention, because the impact of this communication breakdown isn't theoretical, it's measurable, it's massive, and it's probably affecting your relationship right now. The largest study ever conducted on orgasm rates, Oxford Academic 2024, 24,752 Americans, revealed something shocking. Men's orgasm rates across all age groups, 70 to 85%. Women's orgasm rates, 46 to 58%. That's a persistent 22 to 30% gap across every single age group. And here's the part that should really concern you. 81.6% of women don't orgasm from intercourse alone. 81.6%. If you're having the kind of sex you see in movies, you know, passionate intercourse that ends with both partners climaxing simultaneously, you're literally ignoring what works for 4 out of 5 women. But it gets worse. The American Sexual Health Association surveyed thousands of Americans. Only 38% are satisfied with their sex lives, despite 64% believing that sex influences overall life satisfaction. Think about that. Most people believe sex is crucial for happiness, yet less than 4 in 10 are actually satisfied. And when they looked at why, they found something revealing. Only 24% of couples facing sexual issues feel they can be honest about sex. 1 in 4. That means 76% of couples with sexual problems can't even talk about it. Here's another mind-blowing statistic. Women in relationships lasting more than 6 months are 6 times more likely to orgasm than during hookups. 6 times. This isn't about technique or anatomy. It's about communication and comfort. The longer she's with you, the more likely she is to orgasm, but only if communication improves. For most couples, it doesn't. Now let's talk about the mind-reading trap, because this is where things get really destructive. Researchers Wright and Roloff from Baylor University studied what they call mind-reading expectations, MRE. These are the beliefs that your partner should just know what you want without you having to say it. Their findings? Mind-reading expectations create combative responses and silent treatment. They reduce conflict resolution and create negative communication cycles. Distressed couples consistently hold unrealistic beliefs about their telepathic abilities. She thinks if he really loved me, he would know what I want. You think, if she's not saying anything, everything must be fine. Both of you are wrong and both of you are suffering for it. Remember that statistic from the beginning. 85% of men believed their partners orgasmed during their last sexual encounter. The reality? 64%. That's a 21% delusion gap. 1 in 5 of you is wrong about whether your partner even had an orgasm last time. And if you're wrong about something that basic, imagine what else you're missing. But here's the statistic that really floored me. Women who earn more than their male partners reported faking orgasms at twice the frequency of other women. Twice. Why? Because when she threatens your position as the provider, she compensates by protecting your sexual ego. She's literally trading her pleasure for your comfort. She makes more money, so she makes sure you feel like a sex god to balance the scales. The Archives of Sexual Behavior published research that changes everything we thought we knew about sexual communication. 91% of sexual initiations were non-verbal rather than verbal. 91%. Most participants preferred communicating sexual pleasure non-verbally. Verbal communication was reserved mainly for expressing pain or dislike. Think about that. She'll only speak up when something hurts or she hates it. Everything else? She's hoping you'll figure it out from her body language. And here's the kicker. Nonverbal communication fully mediated the relationship between sexual self-esteem and satisfaction. In other words, her satisfaction depends entirely on whether you can read her nonverbal signals. She's communicating constantly. You're just not equipped to hear her. The clinical reality is brutal. She's broadcasting on a frequency you're not tuned to receive. And every time you miss those signals, every time you misinterpret her responses, every time you assume satisfaction that isn't there, the gap between what she wants and what she gets grows wider. So let's get specific. What exactly stops her from just telling you what she wants? I've identified 7 distinct barriers based on the research, and I guarantee she's facing at least 4 of them right now. Barrier number 1, fear of your fragile ego. This is the big one. Women consistently report protecting their partner's masculinity as the primary barrier to sexual communication. But here's what's really happening. She's not making this up. She's observed how you react to criticism in every other area of life. Remember when she suggested a different route and you insisted you knew where you were going? Remember when she offered advice about work and you got defensive? Remember when she mentioned that your friend was being inappropriate and you said she was overreacting? Every defensive response, every shutdown, every moment of wounded pride, she filed that away. And now she's calculated that your ego can't handle sexual feedback. She's not wrong, is she? Barrier number 2, the shame spiral. Sexual shame affects women's arousal, desire, orgasm, and pain experiences significantly more than men's. We're talking about deep, visceral shame that she might not even be conscious of. Body image concerns. What if he notices my stomach? Genital self-image issues. What if I look weird down there? Sexual trauma. Remember, 23.9% report scary sexual situations. These create a shame spiral that makes honest communication feel impossible. Barrier number 3, the cultural double-bind. She faces an impossible choice. Express her desires and risk being labeled promiscuous, or stay silent and remain unsatisfied. There's no winning move. Cross-cultural evidence shows this is universal. From purity culture in Christianity, to traditional gender roles in Latino culture, to honor-shame dynamics in Asian cultures, women worldwide face systematic sexual silencing. Barrier number 4, attachment trauma. If she has anxious attachment, she'll consent to things she doesn't want just to keep you close. If she has avoidant attachment, she'll disconnect emotionally during sex. Either way, authentic communication becomes impossible. These patterns were set in childhood, long before she met you, but they're playing out in your bedroom right now. Barrier number 5, the mind-reading trap. She genuinely believes that if you really loved her, you would just know what she wants. This isn't rational, but it's real. Society told her that true love means never having to ask. Every romantic movie showed couples who just knew what the other wanted. So when you don't automatically know, she interprets it as you not caring enough to pay attention. Barrier number 6, power imbalance. When women earn more or have higher professional status, they compensate by protecting male ego sexually. She's literally trading her pleasure for relationship stability. The research is clear. She's doing complex calculations about power dynamics that you're not even aware are happening. If she threatens your position in one area, she'll subordinate herself in another to maintain balance. Barrier number 7, communication style mismatch. You want direct communication. Tell me what you want. Simple, right? But she's been trained for 20, 30, 40 years to communicate indirectly. Asking her to suddenly be direct about sex is like asking her to suddenly speak Mandarin. She literally doesn't have the language. S3X, one of the world's leading relationship experts, puts it perfectly. Women have basically not been given the license to say what they want sexually. Wrapped in their relational needs are all kinds of other longings for sexual intimacy that they can't articulate. She can't tell you what she wants because she was never taught how. She was taught to be desired, not to desire, to be pleased, not to seek pleasure, to respond, not to initiate. These 7 barriers create a fortress of silence around her authentic sexuality. And here's the hard truth. You probably helped build some of those walls without even knowing it. All right, enough with the problems. Let's talk solutions. I'm going to give you 7 specific strategies that can break through these barriers. But warning, this isn't going to be comfortable. Growth never is. Strategy 1. Create psychological safety first. John Gottman's research shows successful couples maintain a 20-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions, 20-to-1. Before you can have any conversation about sex, you need to build massive emotional safety. Here's how. Stop getting defensive about non-sexual feedback. I'm serious. The next time she gives you any feedback about anything, your only response should be, "Thank you for telling me that, help me understand more." Practice emotional regulation. When you feel that defensive spike, that urge to explain why she's wrong, stop. Breathe. Remember that her feelings are data, not attacks. Demonstrate consistently that her feelings are safe with you. Every time you respond without defensiveness, you're telling her nervous system that it's safe to be more vulnerable. Strategy 2. Address the shame directly. Research shows cognitive reappraisal as an emotion regulation strategy positively predicted sexual desire. In simple terms, helping her reframe shame increases her desire. Start having shame-free conversations about bodies, not during sex, but during normal times. Normalize discussions about bodily functions, changes, concerns. Validate her experiences without trying to fix them. When she expresses body insecurity, don't say, "You're beautiful, stop worrying." Say, "I hear you. Tell me more about what that feels like." Learn about sexual shame, read about it, understand its impacts. The more you understand, the better equipped you are to help her heal. Strategy 3. Become fluent in her communication style. Remember, 91% of sexual initiation is nonverbal. You need to become a master at reading her signals. Start paying attention to her breathing. Shallow breathing means anxiety. Deep breathing means relaxation. Changes in breathing pattern are communication. Notice muscle tension. When she tenses up, something's wrong. When she relaxes into you, something's right. Her body is constantly talking. Learn to appreciate indirect communication. When she says, "That's interesting," she might mean, "I don't like that." When she says, "Maybe we could try something different," and she means, "Please stop what you're doing." Don't force direct communication. Meet her where she is. If she communicates indirectly, respond to what she's really saying, not what you wish she would say. Strategy 4. Challenge your own Madonna whore programming. This one's going to hurt, but it's necessary. Ask yourself honestly, do I respect women who are sexually assertive? Can I handle my partner being more sexually experienced than me? Do I secretly judge women who express desires directly? Your answers might surprise you. Most men think they're sexually progressive until they're faced with a woman who really owns her sexuality. Research shows men who genuinely support gender equality have healthier and more sexually satisfying relationships. This isn't about being politically correct. It's about your own sexual satisfaction. Strategy 5. The attachment repair process. If she has anxious attachment, provide consistent reassurance that sexual honesty strengthens rather than threatens the relationship. Say things like, "I love when you tell me what feels good. It makes me feel closer to you." If she has avoidant attachment, create space for gradual vulnerability without pressure. Don't push for immediate openness. Instead, model vulnerability yourself. Share your own insecurities and fears. Strategy 6. Master the timing. Remember, hormonal fluctuations affect communication preferences. Women are most sexually assertive during ovulation when estrogen peaks. Learn her cycle, not in a creepy way, but in a supportive way. Notice when she seems more open, more communicative, more sexually assertive. Those patterns aren't random. Have important sexual conversations when she's most hormonally primed for them. This isn't manipulation, it's working with her biology instead of against it. Strategy 7. Develop sexual vocabulary together. Emily Nagoski recommends building specific language for desires, boundaries, and experiences. You need to create a shared sexual vocabulary. Start with written communication if verbal feels too threatening. Leave notes, send texts, write emails. Writing creates psychological distance that makes vulnerability easier. Create code words for different acts, intensities, desires. Make it playful. Make it yours. The more specific your shared language, the easier communication becomes. Here's a practical exercise. Each of you writes down 3 things you'd like to try, 3 things you definitely don't want, and 3 things you're curious but nervous about. Exchange lists. No judgment, just information gathering. These strategies aren't quick fixes. They're long-term investments in your sexual connection. But I promise you, if you implement even half of these, you will have more sexual communication in the next month than you've had in the past year. Before we go further, you need to understand something crucial about how her brain processes pleasure. Because once you get this, everything else clicks into place. Neuroimaging studies show that women have greater activation in emotional processing regions during sexual activity. Men show more genital-focused activation. This isn't social conditioning, this is literally how our brains are wired. For you, arousal might be straightforward. See something sexy, get turned on, want sex. Simple circuit. For her, her brain is running complex calculations involving emotional safety, relationship security, body image, past experiences, current stress levels, hormonal state, and about 15 other variables. Her pleasure is context-dependent, emotion-dependent, and relationship-dependent in ways yours simply isn't. Emily Nagoski's research revealed something that should be taught to every man. There's only a 10% overlap between physiological arousal and psychological desire in women. 10%. For men, it's 50%. This means you cannot, I repeat cannot, judge her arousal by physical signs. Her body might be responding while her mind is completely elsewhere. This is why she can be physically lubricated but not turned on. Why she can have an orgasm but not enjoy the sex. Why she can seem into it but feel disconnected. Her mind determines her pleasure more than her body does. And if her mind is worried about your ego, processing shame, navigating cultural messages, or dissociating from trauma, her body's responses mean nothing. Here's the evolutionary mismatch we're dealing with. Our brains evolved for small tribal societies where everyone knew everyone, where sexual relationships had clear social consequences, where reputation was everything. Now we're in a world with birth control, career women, dating apps, and pornography. But her brain is still running software designed for a completely different operating system. Helen Fisher puts it brilliantly. We've evolved 3 brain systems for reproduction: lust, romantic love, and attachment. Problems arise when we confuse them. For men, these systems can run independently. You can feel lust without love, have sex without attachment. But for her, these systems are interconnected. When one system is activated, it affects the others. This is why she can't just have sex the way you can. Every sexual experience is simultaneously activating her attachment system, is he safe? Her romantic love system, do I feel connected? And her lust system, am I aroused? If any one of these systems sends up a red flag, the whole experience shuts down. But here's the thing. She might not even be conscious of which system is raising the alarm. She just knows something feels off. Now here's some good news. We're in the middle of a cultural revolution when it comes to sexual communication, and you can be part of the solution instead of the problem. 72% of Americans aged 18 to 24 report physical sexual satisfaction, compared to lower rates in older generations. Why? Because younger couples are 3 times more likely to discuss sexual preferences openly. Think about what's changed. Comprehensive sex education is more common. Social media has created awareness about sexual pleasure equality. The Me Too movement has forced conversations about consent and communication. Religious influence on sexuality is declining. The COVID pandemic created an unexpected breakthrough. 30% of women reported better sex during lockdown. Why? Because couples had time to actually talk, to explore, to communicate without the pressure of busy lives. But here's what's really interesting: the international variations. In Sweden, 89% view premarital sex as acceptable. They also have the world's lowest teen pregnancy rates and highest reported sexual satisfaction. Connection? Absolutely. In cultures where sexual communication is normalized, satisfaction skyrockets. In cultures where it's suppressed, satisfaction plummets. This isn't complicated math. You have a choice. You can be part of the old guard, clinging to outdated ideas about how men and women should communicate about sex. Or you can be part of the revolution, the men who are adapting, who are learning to communicate, who are creating psychological safety for their partners. They're having the best sex of their lives. And their partners are finally experiencing the pleasure they deserve. Let me give you a concrete roadmap, a 12-week transformation blueprint that will revolutionize your sexual communication. Phase 1. Foundation building. Weeks 1 through 4. Weeks 1 and 2. Practice non-defensive responses to any criticism, any feedback she gives you about anything. Your only response is curiosity, not defense. Weeks 3 and 4. Initiate non-sexual intimate conversations. Talk about emotions, fears, dreams. Build emotional intimacy without any sexual agenda. Gottman's research proves that emotional intimacy must precede sexual intimacy in healthy relationships. You're laying groundwork. Phase 2. Sexual safety creation. Weeks 5 through 8. Weeks 5 and 6. Discuss sexual shame together. Share your own shame and insecurities. Yes, you have them too. Model the vulnerability you want to see. Weeks 7 and 8. Establish safe words and boundaries for sexual communication. Create agreements about how you'll talk about sex. Make it safe to be honest. Research shows women need emotional safety before sexual vulnerability becomes possible. You're creating that safety. Phase 3. Communication protocol development. Weeks 9 through 12. Weeks 9 and 10. Practice written sexual communication. Leave notes about what you enjoyed. Text about what you're thinking. Write removes the immediate pressure of face-to-face communication. Weeks 11 and 12. Implement regular sexual state of the union conversations. Once a month, have a structured conversation about your sex life. What's working? What isn't? What do you want to try? Couples with regular sexual communication show 40% higher satisfaction rates. 40%. Phase 4. Advanced integration. This is ongoing. Learn her cycle and hormonal patterns. Master nonverbal communication reading. Develop sexual mindfulness practices together. Create ongoing feedback loops without defensiveness. This isn't a quick fix. It's a complete rewiring of how you approach sexual communication. But the payoff? A sexual connection you didn't know was possible. Gentlemen, we've covered a lot of ground today. But I want to leave you with something that might be hard to hear. Your partner has sexual desires she's never shared with you. This isn't speculation. The research is overwhelming, the statistics are undeniable, and the experts are unanimous. The question isn't whether this applies to your relationship, it's whether you're brave enough to do something about it. You have two paths forward. Path 1, denial and defensiveness. You can dismiss everything I've shared. Tell yourself you're the exception. Continue believing that 95% accuracy rate, while she joins the 59% of women faking orgasms. You can maintain the status quo while she slowly disconnects from her sexuality, while the gap between what she wants and what she gets grows wider every year. Path 2. Courage and growth. You can become the man she feels safe enough to be completely honest with sexually. You can create the psychological safety that allows her authentic desires to emerge. You can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. The research is clear. Men who support gender equality, who challenge their own assumptions, who create emotional safety, they have healthier and more sexually satisfying relationships. Both partners report higher satisfaction, better communication, stronger connection. But here's what this really comes down to. The woman in your life is carrying decades of conditioning, cultural programming, that told her that her desires don't matter. Possibly trauma that makes vulnerability feel dangerous. Biological wiring that makes her sexuality more complex than yours. She's fighting against all of that every single day, and you have the power to make that fight easier or harder. Every defensive response makes it harder. Every moment of genuine curiosity makes it easier. Every judgment reinforces her silence. Every acceptance invites her truth. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one strategy from today. Just one. Not tomorrow, not next month. Today. Because every day you wait is another day she's protecting you from her truth. Another day you're both missing out on the connection you could have. Maybe you start by responding to her next piece of feedback with curiosity instead of defense. Maybe you initiate a conversation about shame, yours and hers. Maybe you start paying attention to her non-verbal communication. Whatever you choose, do it today. Because here's the truth that should motivate you. 55% of women want to talk about sex, but don't feel safe doing so. Your partner is probably one of them. She wants to tell you. She wants to share her desires. She wants to experience pleasure without shame or fear. But she needs you to make it safe first. Don't let your relationship become another statistic. Don't be the guy who discovers 10 years from now that his partner has been faking it the whole time. Don't miss out on the incredible sex life you could both be having because you're too proud to admit you don't have all the answers. Be the change. Be the exception. Be the man who makes her feel safe enough to tell you everything. And if you want to go deeper, check out my next video on reading female signals. Because mastering nonverbal communication is just as crucial as verbal. The link is right here.